And I think one of the funniest things that ever happened to me about accents was when we were in Norway doing Sweeney Todd, and I was trying to do some kind of British, and
Oh yes,
I think he said, "You're just kind of all over England, like you just have every accent in every sentence.
yes, you were marvelous because I
Just do an
remember
American, you're fine."
because you were funny because you. I remember you texting me beforehand and saying, "You're going to have to help me with the English. You're going to have to help me with the English." And I was going, "Look, you'll be fine. Relax, relax." And then you came in and we did a sort of read through. I remember, or sing through, whatever. And you started off, and I thought, "Well, that's very good. That's sort of Southern English." And then suddenly you sounded like you came from Glasgow, which is not even England. And then, then we had a bit of Northern England, and I have to say, it was definitely a guided tour of the
Yeah.
accents, the regional accents of Great Britain. You
Come
had them
on,
all.
we'll explore the accents that I learned from watching Doctor Who.
That's right. But in the end, it worked perfectly well with you having. I mean, you didn't sound super American, but in a way, you'd been away for years as the character.
I like
I
that.
mean,
He got sent to prison in Australia, and they made him
and he
speak like
came
an
out as an
American.
American. That was part of the punishment.
It's good. Oh, no greater punishment could you imagine.
No. Let's hope.
So I thought it would be great to have you come on and just talk about some of these. I mean, some of the great stories that you told when we were hanging out in
Um,
Norway and in
That's
London.
right. Gosh, where to start? Gosh, it's a long, 37 years of doing this crazy job,
Right.
apart from this year, which is a year off. I keep thinking, it's been a bad year, but actually, think of all those top C's you've saved. You haven't wasted. They're there for another day if anybody wants to hear them.
You subscribe to like the jar of high C's that you have in your body.
There's only so many.
Saving
Only
these.
so many. Yeah, yeah. Save those bad boys for another day. Some of the best friends that you make. You do a job with somebody and you show up and so as you say, you're all pushed together. You have to have dinner together, whether you want to or not. Sometimes, and you kind of mix up with everyone, and there are certain people that you just think, oh gosh, I'm going to know you all my life. And
Yeah.
certainly that's been the case with me. I mean, I'm just trying to pluck names out of the air, but I mean, one case in point is Donny Ray Albert.
Yeah.
The wonderful Donny Ray. I did my first Brunhilde's with him as Wotan in Tokyo. And we were in the same hotel, and we all, it was a bit like being at a boarding school because we all went to breakfast together. We all had lunch. It was, it could have been a bit tricky.
It does often feel like summer camp.
Yeah, it feels like summer camp.
Yeah.
Anyway, Donny Ray and I, of course, had to become father and daughter in the show, and we became mates. And we'd sit there and sort of chew our oatmeal together quietly in the mornings at breakfast time in this huge hotel. And then I think the thing that probably bonded us was terror, but not just terror of singing Wagner, but there was one night when we were in this sort of, I don't know, 50-story hotel. It was huge in the middle of Tokyo. And suddenly all the pictures on the wall started to sway. And I thought, hello, what's going on here? I only had one glass of wine at dinner. What's happening? And then the phone rang, and Donny Ray's voice came down the phone. I can't begin to imitate his voice, but it was very funny. And he suddenly went, honey, this sucker is swaying. And it was the hotel. We were in the middle of an earthquake. And from that moment on, I thought, yeah, this guy's going to be my pal. And then cut to, hopefully this summer, we're going to actually be acting together in Shakespeare's King Lear for a festival over here. It's a production that's going to be with all opera singers, Sir John Tomlinson, Sir Thomas Allen, Donny Ray, me, all sorts of people. So, yeah, we're going to be actors.
That is really cool. Oh,
yeah.
Thomas Allen.
And that,
one of my heroes.
And that whole
Love
thing
that guy.
is, and he's very, very funny as well. We will laugh a lot. But, that's all come around via Keith Warner, the director. So that's another link. It was Keith's production when I first met Donny Ray, and now it's Keith's production of King Lear. So there's an example of somebody like as well, Jake Gardner.
Yeah.
I met Jake 20 odd years ago. He was Sharpless when I was Madame Butterfly at New York City Opera. And then I met Jill. And then, we meet again in Houston doing Sweeney Todd in 2017. Yeah. And that whole time we'd all kept in touch, but the minute we walked into the room together, oh, hi, how are you doing? Should we have lunch? It was absolutely as though we'd seen each other the day before. That's the and I think that's what's really been missing this year.
Yeah.
Is that, camaraderie and being with your pals. It's so
even
important.
I mean, I've noticed
So
even when we
important.
try to do like when we do things. I mean, I just did a recording of a stream, like a filming basically.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the way the rules are, we can't hang out.
No,
we can't like even after like after we wrapped, it was like, okay, well,
Bye.
yeah. Like I'm
Terrible.
going home because that's it.
Oh no. Well, ring stories are quite funny, I suppose. Just going on from Donny Ray. I mean, I was just thinking before we picked up this call, probably one of the most terrifying moments of my life was doing Brunhilde at Covent Garden. I did it twice, once by mistake and once officially.
You
mistake
accidentally
version,
did Brunhilde.
I just happened to be, there. No, actually, I didn't happen to be there. That was what the mistake was. I was in France doing Siegfried Brunhilde, just as a separate piece. We weren't doing a cycle. It was just the Siegfried. And as is the wont of our dear French friends, they do go on strike very often.
They tend to do that.
And so we'd had our first. They tend to do it. So we'd all built up to the first night, and then the first night didn't happen because there was a strike. And then the first night happened like about 3 days later.
Yeah.
And then there was a gap of about 3 days. So we all said, right, this is the night we go out for our big team dinner. We haven't got to sing for 3 days. We can celebrate. We can have a great old time. Yeah. The old Saint Joseph was, lined up there, and the meal was delicious. We were all screaming and telling stories, and how we all are when we don't have to work.
Yeah.
And for some reason, a little voice in my head said, check your phone. Now, at the time, my husband was singing in Sydney, in Tannhäuser, and I thought, well, it can't be him because the timing's not right, but I must check my phone. I don't know why. I had this feeling. And I looked, and going back to Keith Warner, the director, it was a message from him. So here we are, picture the scene, in a beautiful restaurant, a couple of bottles of San Jose down at least, San Joseph rather, beautiful food, everybody having a ball. And I get a message to say, I need you in London tomorrow because our Brunhilde is just cancelled. So this is like 9:30 at night, UK time. So I threw some euros on the table, said to the assembled company, I've got to go. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you soon. Let me know if I owe him any more money. So off I went back to where I was staying, made a few phone calls. I had Tony Papano on the phone. I had Catton, the casting man. And there's just one tiny little element of this that's probably not going to work. And that is because I'm in France and it's now 11 o'clock at night. I haven't sung this role for 10 months. I don't have a score here. And you're asking me to come and do it tomorrow in a production that I've never seen. Yeah. And it was part of a ring cycle. And they said, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
you heard us correctly.
I was like, okay. So I, of course, lay there all night in my bed thinking, how does it go? How does it go? How does it go? And then I got up at like 5 a.m., went to the airport, flew to London, went to a hotel. I had a bag full of kind of reasonable clothes to wear to go into the theatre for the show, thinking, well, I'll go and do the rehearsal and then I'll go back to the hotel, have a nice bath, and and I can get dressed up and feel nice and blah. Not a chance. I got there, costume fitting, a music call with Tony. I was taken onto the set. I just made a decision to just do Act 2 with the director, because then there was a huge dinner interval between Act 2 and Act 3. So I thought, well, I'll learn Act 3 in the interval, the actual staging. That's fine. Anyway, I never made it back to the hotel. Yeah, I never made it back to the hotel. I looked like for the entire day, I looked like a bag lady who got up at 8 a.m., 5 a.m. or whatever it was. And I arrived on the set and this man came towards me, sort of smiling and being quite charming, and we had somebody with them. And suddenly he said, hi, I'm singing Siegmund tonight. And I went, oh, hi, yeah, hi. And it was Placido Domingo. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then I go to my dressing room.
God, you look so familiar.
Still looking like a
what is it? Who?
Yeah,
I feel like we know each other. Is it?
I've got all your records. Anyway, so I go to the dressing room and I'm there and I'm still looking like a bag lady. And I'm thinking, I am insane. I don't even know what happens in Act 3. And I could hear the orchestra warming up to start Act 1, of course, which I'm not in. And there's a knock on the door and it's Sir John Tomlins, who was singing Wotan. And his opening line was, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, good point." And he hadn't even been told. I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, good point." Anyway, I did the show, and then we did Act 2, managed to, because I'd done the staging of that. And then in Act 3, God bless John Tomlinson, we go upstairs to a rehearsal room in the theatre where all the stage management are holding, like tape that you put around when there's been an accident, like ticker tape, They're all holding this in a big long line. And I, what's going on here? And John said, well, in Act 3, there is a massive wall that spins, and it spins this way and it spins that way. And you have to be on the right side of that wall. Otherwise, you will literally be catapulted to the back of the stall. It's just like, so all these wonderful stage management people were standing there pretending to be this wall and spinning around like this. And thank goodness for those girls singing the Valkyries, note to self.
Yeah.
Always make friends with your Valkyries, because they would begin like this. Because the wall was coming up and like, oh, and then back again the other wall. So that was my first experience with that particular ring cycle. It was like a mad dream. And I remember lots of people heard about that I was going to do it and very kindly sent flowers. And I had something like 24 bouquets of flowers, but I had to go back to France the next day because I had Siegfried on the Sunday. And I was determined to get these flowers back to France. So I got the biggest plastic bag. I left all my clothes and everything in the hotel. I didn't bother taking any of that. I got this massive plastic bag, sort of thing like a sheeting that you'd put over for decorating or something, and put them all in there and lugged them to the airport. Got to the check-in, and the British Airways lady said, have you just got married or something? And I said, no, I've just sung Brunhilde at Covent Garden. And she said, I have no idea what that is, but I'm not sure you can take these on board.
I don't know what that
I sort of
means.
nearly wept, but I did get them on board. But I did get them on board.
I'm going to see you standing there with
I was staying.
Giant
It was massive. It was massive.
bag of flowers.
Totally insane. And I got them there and I got them back to where I was staying. And for the next week, it looked like I was living in a funeral home. I mean, I was surrounded by these flowers, Yeah, exactly. And then, as a result of that, I actually got asked to do the next round of cycles in my own right. Now, go back to Valkyria. The very beginning, the director's original idea was that Brunhilde would descend on a ladder from above the proscenium arch, singing the Hoya to Hose, while Wotan was there with his spear doing whatever he wanted to do.
Like this.
Oh yeah, coming down, Hoya to Ho, and it was so high. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Anyway, I said I'd give it a go. And actually, once you got up to the top, which did feel like sort of Mount Kilimanjaro, by the time you'd walked up 400 steps or whatever it was, to get to the top. And I had a lovely guy, stagehand at the top, who would put powder on my hands and strap me in with the safety belt. And honestly, the orchestra and the stage just looked like you were watching, from an aeroplane. It was tiny, And the music would start. Every time we rehearsed it worked like a charm. Opening night, this belt that I had on, do you remember those belts? You probably had one when you were a kid. Had like a snake fastener, metal snake fastener.
Yeah.
And it was like made of kind of hard, almost like plastic, Well, that was the belt I had on. And I got on the ladder and I started singing the Hoya to Hose, and I was descending, and Bryn Terrible was the Wotan, and he was jabbing me with the spear. And I got to the bottom and I had to click these two things to release myself, and it wouldn't unclick. Opening night, first ring cycle, Covent Garden. And I was singing away, carrying on, and I was pressing this damn button, for all I was worth. And it had got caught ever so slightly in the belt. I mean, it was a fluke. And I thought, I'm going to sing the whole of this opera standing behind this ladder. This is it for the next 5 hours or whatever it is. Yeah. Anyway, at one point I just looked, because obviously stage management got wise, and I just looked and I thought, what would Brynhilde do? Meanwhile, singing. You know, Bryn's eyes were out on stalks like this. And so I thought, okay, I'll just wave in a kind of Brynhilde-ish kind of way at the stage. Stage management. And so I sort of went, oh, like this. And eventually somebody got the message and came on, but they decided to cover themselves in a cloak. So, for some reason, then this figure without a face or a form came on in this cloak with a pair of scissors and literally cut me out of it. And then we carried on. But honestly, craziness only happens to me, that sort of stuff, you know. I don't know.
So you do that a lot, though. You've had quite a few jump in stories, don't you?
Always.
You said you jumped in on Breaking in the Waves too, or Breaking the Waves.
Yes, that was another
a day. Or something?
in a couple of days. Yeah, I had a phone call. I you know what it's like. You get to the end of your season and you can see those 3 or 4 weeks all mapped out. You've got a holiday booked. You've got everything organised.
Yeah.
It's all going to be lovely. It's going to be just relaxation all the way. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, great. You know, I don't have to do anything for nearly a month now. And my agent phones and goes, Sue, we've had a call from the Edinburgh Festival. A bit of a panic going on. Unfortunately, one of the singers in this new piece, Breaking the Waves, has got a family problem and has to leave.
Super easy piece too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
so I'm like,
totally simple.
I have to be absolutely, and I'm friends with Missy and Royce now, so I can say this. I didn't know anything about it. Yeah. And I said, look, it's the mum. They said, it's the mum. And I said, oh, well, I can do mums. That's all right. I can do mums. When would they need me? When is it? Well, they need you tomorrow. This is sort of lunchtime on a Tuesday. And I said, but I'm supposed to be in Kefalonia on holiday next week. Well, yeah, maybe that's not going to happen. So I said, well, let me see the score. Let me see the score at least. So the score came through and I thought, well, yeah, it is kind of doable. So I went there on the Wednesday. I had a music call in the morning. And then in the afternoon, there was a Sitzprobe. And Missy Mazzoli and Royce Vavrek were sitting there. And I thought, my God, this is terrifying. You know, all these other people had been rehearsing it for weeks. So anyway, that was that. And then I had to come back to London for something that I couldn't get out of the next day. And then I flew back to Scotland on the Friday. And I got off the plane after delays like you can't imagine for all sorts of crazy reasons. The train was cancelled, so I went to the airport. The airport was flooded, so I went to another airport, you know. And I got there and somebody met me and they took me to the theatre and they put me in a costume and I went on the stage and it was the stage and orchestra rehearsal. And I literally sung this thing through once in a room with Sitzprobe. And I had to act it and everything. And it was, I had this little hat on.
How did you memorize it there? I mean, I've done jump-ins and done express learning sometimes when I've just got too busy and didn't learn something quick enough. But in 2 days, a piece like that, that's not, there's not a recording out there or anything. You know, you can't just like...
Well, no. But luckily for me, I mean, the role wasn't huge, put it that way. It wasn't, I mean, I couldn't have looked at not that I would have been asked to sing the title role, but I mean, the title role, Bess, I mean, it's amazing. Nobody would want to learn that in 2 days. But the mother... It was doable. And don't forget, I did have a lot of time in airports that were being flooded and on aeroplanes that were being delayed, on, trains that were cancelled. And, it was only I could step into something where suddenly Scotland became a danger zone because of high winds. So nobody could get there in any shape or form. But I did get there and it did happen. But it was very exciting. And then, we had 2 or 3 days of rehearsal over that weekend and then we were on. But it was, it was good for the old grey matter.
It's good to know we can still do it,
Absolutely, when needs must, definitely.
Yeah, what are sometimes like some of the best stories I've had in my life about performing, or is when you're up there and something just goes terribly wrong, just,
Oh gosh.
and you feel it, like the panic just rising, and it's like in A Beautiful Mind. I don't know if you saw this movie with Russell Crowe, and he's like, you sort of see what he sees, and it's all these formulas and stuff, and that's what it feels like to me, like when you're having to sort of split your brain in half, where this part's still doing the opera, and over here is like, how am I going to get this chair out of the toilet that's over here now? So like,
Oh, don't even think. Okay, so I'll tell a story against myself, but
good. I love
I
this.
made my. Was it my American? No, it wasn't my American. It wasn't my American debut, but or was it my American? No, wait a minute. No, I made my American debut in Portland, Oregon, singing Madame Butterfly, and then they very kindly invited me back the next year to sing the title role of Tosca. So again, Keith Warner is involved in this. It was his production. I tell you that, guys. He's got a lot to answer for. Anyway, it was the most glorious production, and Tosca's first entrance, she was framed in silhouette in this beautiful light with this beautiful purple dress and this kind of shawl over her head holding flowers, and then in she comes, and we'd rehearsed this a million times, and we had all sorts of fun people in it. Peter Strummer and Louis Oti and Ian D'Onofrio. Yeah, I mean, this was another great social event these weeks. It was brilliant. So anyway, we'd rehearsed this a million times. It all was lovely, and I couldn't wait. I was excited. And I get to the opening night, and my heart's beating, and I'm standing there, Mario, 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 off stage, and then cue the music, cue the entrance, and can you believe this? The floor was wet for some reason, and my heel caught on the floor, and my first entrance was basically me sliding on my backside down to the front of the stage, managing to stop before I fell in the pit. And then the best bit, you couldn't have paid it to happen, the pearls I was wearing just popped and exploded. So there was like this of all these pearls everywhere, and then I had to get up and try and regain some composure and go,
I'm the most graceful, dignified woman in Rome. It's a Carol Burnett moment.
I just wanted to die. I just wanted to go, stop, let's rewind, let's do it again.
There's no coming back from this. That's all anybody's going to talk about for the rest of the show. We have to restart this.
Absolutely. I mean, but we did manage to get through. I mean, bless their hearts, nobody in the press actually ever mentioned it.
Oh, really?
The soprano slid on her backside down the stage. But apart from that, nobody mentioned it. It was great. And that was one time. And then years ago when I first started, I was in Donizetti's Maria Stuarda, but it was in English. We were doing it at English National Opera, Mary Stuart. And I was dressed up to look 400 years old, to be I was something like 26. Typical, when you do look old, they may try and make you look young and vice versa. Anyway, I was Hannah Kennedy, the sort of faithful servant and confidant of Mary. And it was a very, very hot summer's day in London. And we were in a very traditional Elizabethan period costume, with big, thick ruffs up to here, thick fabric. There was a big back screen of some castle in Scotland, wherever it was. I can't remember where it was set. But, it was very, very traditional. And because the costumes were so heavy and it was boiling hot, the dear stage crew thought that they would leave the dock doors open. And the dock doors of the English National Opera open onto a street leading up to Covent Garden, to the Covent Garden Piazza. So it's just Bedfordbury, it's just the street. So regular people are just going back and forth. But there was some air coming in, which was great, which we needed. Anyway, we were doing great. We were going great guns, and we got towards the bit just before Mary goes to get the chop. And I suddenly turned round, and there was a man with his back to the audience wearing shorts. He'd sort of backed on like this to the stage. He'd come through the dock door thinking, gosh, I wonder what's going on in here. And he had shorts and a t-shirt on. And it took him at least 30 seconds to realise that there was a full orchestra and a whole bunch of people singing. And there's a supermarket here called Tesco's, and he had a Tesco's plastic carrier bag in his hand, and slowly he turned around and looked. There's like 2,000 people and an orchestra and all these crazy people sweating like hell, dressed up in Elizabethan costume. And he scuttled off. And I don't know how we got to the end of that show, but when Mary got beheaded, Hannah in the production was meant to be distraught. Well, I was low that I actually had to fake a kind of mental breakdown. I was sobbing. It was so over the top. This reaction. I was like heaving and crying. And
I'm so sad.
I mean, even Mary. Even Mary going to be beheaded was like, it was terrible. Oh,
I feel like that guy was definitely an American tourist.
I don't know who he was. Poor soul. He's probably in some trauma center somewhere.
Was he wearing a red baseball cap? Definitely.
No, he wasn't. Poor soul. Oh gosh, yeah, that was.
That sounds like right out of a movie. I mean, that would be a great scene to write in a movie, like somehow, like in.
I did fall through the stage once as well in Falstaff. I was singing Alice Ford with the great baritone Benjamin Luxon. I don't know if you know him, but this guy, he's still around. He's the coolest man ever. I did Pamina with him when he was Papageno, and I jumped into that, and we became pals. And then officially, I was dancing Alice with him, and in the second act, when all the women, they're all chitter-chattering, we had to walk up stage. And it was a production where, as the piece got on, we became more and more Elizabethan. So by the end, we were in kind of Elizabethan Shakespearean time, whatever costume, traditional stuff. But at the beginning, we were in a Shakespearean Elizabethan top, but a very tight skirt that was very much of the 1990s, whenever it was. And anyway, we were in a show now, and the trapdoor was there, ready for later to send Falstaff into the river and all that stuff. And we all walked upstage with our cups of tea, and we were singing away. And the Meg Page turned around and gave me this really weird look. And she's a pal of mine. And I thought, why is she looking at me? Whoa! And she was trying to tell me that the trapdoor was loose. And because three of them have walked on it ahead of me, the bolt, which was already loose, had got looser and looser and looser. So by the time I stood on it, it had worked its way out. And I fell through the stage in a show with my cup of tea in my hand. And luckily, only the upstage bit of the downstage bit of the trap collapsed, but the
upstage part of the trap was up and the downstage was down.
Yes, and because the trap wasn't being used at that point in the show, they hadn't put the safety net beneath it. So I looked down and there was a 16-foot drop to the men's toilets. And I suddenly thought, I'm going to wind up on the floor down here. Anyway, I managed to climb out, but it wasn't elegant.
Wait, so when you fell through, where did you land?
Well, I didn't. My legs were just dangling in midair.
Oh, so you
didn't put anything underneath. You
didn't go all the way through the hole.
No, but I had my elbows on the upstage bit of the trap, just praying that it didn't collapse, and my legs were just dangling free.
You're gotta be kidding me!
And I'd gone right down. No.
So you were just like this.
And my cup of tea went flying. Yeah, and I turned around and went, or whatever the line was. I carried on, and then got out.
Didn't miss a beat.
And it was only no, I didn't. But it was only when the bit comes later where Falstaff is seducing Alice, and I'm lying on and he's singing away to me and there's all this, and Ben just looked at me and he went, he's very Cornish, beautiful Cornish accent. Look at your leg, and I had ripped all my tights and there was this blood pouring out of it because we hadn't had an interval. Anyway, we got there. It was fine. I survived. Whoa. But it was an interesting moment.
I don't think people actually understand how dangerous what we do is for a living. I mean, it's pretty dangerous. You have thousands of pounds of stuff over your head, and there's floors below you that. If I have heard one story about someone falling through a trap, I've heard 100. because it happens so
Oh
often.
gosh,
Like, yeah,
I know. I tend to walk into theatres and do this now,
yeah,
and just see what's above me, and what's at the side, and yeah, it is quite a. You take your life into your hands because, of course, it just takes something like that, just a bolt not being pushed 100% in
yeah.
to its socket.
That's
That could be it.
terrifying. I once had a.
Yeah.
I once was there was a. I was in a show that had a scene where the protagonist. I was the antagonist. She was the protagonist, and she's like swinging around a knife. So that knife was like a prop knife. But in another scene, she had to cut potatoes, and that was a butcher knife like this. They looked almost exactly the same.
Oh
And I
no.
guess they had put them like next to each other. So the
Oh
person I
no.
was working with grabbed the sharp knife. And it was a scene where I'm supposed to I'm coming at her, I'm the bad guy, and she's got kids, and their kids are running around all around. And I grab her hand, and we're struggling with a knife, and the knife is coming like inches from my face, like
Oh no.
kids like above the kids' heads, and we're like, oh, no big deal. So I get the knife away from her, and I'm supposed to go over and stick it in the cabin wall, and I stick it in the cabin wall, and my hand slides down it, and it just slices me like all the way down here. Like
Oh,
I still got a scar there where it cut me, but it was so
whoa.
sharp that I didn't realize it. So I'm
God.
standing there in this beautiful linen white suit,
Uh-oh.
and I
Of
just,
course.
and I'm hanging her husband, and so I'm being real badassy, and I feel my hands I'm like, my hands wet. And I look down and I look literally had a horror movie and just like
I bet it looked
blood
great.
goes all over my suit. And then there's a big puddle, like a puddle like this big, of blood just like spreading out.
Oh my gosh.
And the chorus has to come on stage after the scene, and they come running on stage, and one of the choristers, also in white linen, falls in the blood.
Oh no.
It
But I
was,
bet people thought, gosh, this is brilliant
oh,
staging. This
look
is
at those
how on
special
earth did they
effects.
manage that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Blood can be fun, can't it? I remember doing a lecture at Covent Garden and getting to the end and
Yeah, is there any
doing the
blood in
crazy.
Electra? I don't know.
Oh, just a
A
touch.
little
Yeah.
bit.
And I had this blood bag inside me, underneath, my dress, and had to do this crazy dance, and then wind up on this table, and then at the given moment, whack myself so that I burst the blood. And I mean, it always worked because that's the fear, is that you look like a complete fool and have like one spot on your face or
Yes.
something. But it always worked. But sometimes it just went crazy. So there was one night, it might even have been the opening night, and I was going for it, and I'd stopped singing. So I thought, right, doesn't matter, let's go. I'd finished the role in terms of singing. And I did the thing, and I went, and this blood appeared. And I went on for the curtain call. They couldn't get it off me. I mean, I had to take a call. And I just looked like something out of the Hammer House of Horrors. And this blood was everywhere. I could taste it in my mouth for days. Horrible. Horrible. But yeah. Oh well, the worst thing is if it goes off when it's not meant to,
Oh,
That's the
right. Yeah,
thing.
you're
If you
like,
go at the wrong moment, you go, no, not
ah.
yet, not yet. That feeling of having to you're just hanging on there because you've only had a few
I
days
hate
is,
that feeling, that white
yeah.
knuckle, like,
Yeah, I do too. I like to feel I know what I'm doing.
yeah, I hate the thing, like, it happens to me particularly in English music because, it's my first language. And the way my brain works is, I'll learn things in big blocks, and I learn the narrative, and
Mm.
I'll sort of see it, like I'll see it in my mind, the words, the way they're supposed to go. And then my mind starts editing,
Oh
like
yeah.
changing adjectives and adverbs and stuff, and
Yes.
like, or syntax. And and that's the hardest part about me, because I start changing the way to how I would say it or something.
Yes,
And
that's
so
right.
it's like shutting that thing down, and
Yeah.
getting to
It's
that
not
point where
that.
you're
Be
just able
quiet.
to
Be quiet.
relax and go.
Yeah, I think that happens with English. I find that too, because you suddenly find yourself substituting a word and it makes total sense,
Yeah.
but it's actually not what the librettist wrote. Whereas I suppose in German or French or Italian, you're absolutely rigidly sticking to what's said, and the idea of ad-libbing. Although I have come out with a few random German words at times, which is,
Yeah.
I remember being once in Glyndebourne in the Queen of Spades singing Lisa. That was a crazy time. That I learned that in, I don't know, 8 days, 10 days or something, from scratch, cast full of Russians, except for the guys playing the smaller roles. I don't forget the characters' names now, but they're just like soldiers, and they hang out with Herman. You know, they've all got sort of very Russian sounding names. One night I was about to go on for a scene, and I was waiting in the wings, and one of these guys came off, and he was hilarious British singer, and he said, "Oh, I just couldn't remember a single word. Just couldn't remember a single Russian word. We've been rehearsing it for how long?" And I said, "Well, what did you do?" And he said, "I just kept singing Martina Navratilova all the time." So he sang all his notes perfectly, but to the words of just Martina Navratilova over and over and over again.
Yeah, there's no improv. I mean, that's the gift of English. At least you could get back if you had to.
Yeah, you can make something up and get yourself back in, but yeah. But like whenever I see Martina Navratilova on television, I only think of the Queen of Spades. It's the most bizarre juxtaposition.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, in Italian and German, we can sort of fake it. Like, I don't even know. Like, that language uses a whole different fucking alphabet. I got nothing, man. Like, I've never sung in Russian, ever.
Haven't you?
Never.
You do get there eventually. But it's like Czech, the first time you look at things in Czech, you go, excuse me, where are the vowels?
This is a language on the planet Earth, right? Okay, I was just checking because it looks like
absolutely.
Alien
but
stuff.
It really is the most beautiful language to sing in. Once you've worked out how to sing it, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to sing in. But when you look at it on paper, you think, how can I actually make a note last that long with this selection of letters? Yeah, or whatever, or to master that, or all this sort of stuff. But that's what we do. We challenge ourselves all the time. So
that's kind of like I think there was a jump in that somebody wanted that was available for. I think it was on Yegan or something. They wanted me to learn it in like a week or something, and I was like, "You got to call so and so. Like he's done it. Like I can't. I mean, I have no idea. Like I didn't even study it in school, so I wouldn't even know where to start. Man, I would just be.
No.
I don't even know what this. I mean, one of the things that, like, for me that changed the way I sing was when I started singing more English music, and I sort of understood how words sound, like, emotionally, the emotional context of the text, and it's really hard to feel that way in a language. And so,
in a language that's so alien, right? I mean,
So, once I understood that, then, the work in other languages became so much more. It got so much harder because I always felt anything I felt like I did up until that point was completely inauthentic. It was just learning.
I think with the languages that we in Britain are brought up at school. We have to speak. We're taught French, and we're taught languages. So from the age of 11 I learned French, and then from I think 12 or 13 I learned German. So you have a basic knowledge of it, but something like Russian, when you come to it when you're, I don't know, 25 or 30 or something, you think, first of all, your brain feels like it can't do that anymore. Whereas when you're a kid, you're a sponge and you kind of just absorb it, but then when somebody goes, okay, well, first of all, there's a whole alphabet you've got to learn, and then you've got to, it's got to sound right. I mean, I'll never forget that Queen of Spades, because the whole cast, apart from those two guys playing the soldiers and the Olga, they were all Russians. And we had Rozhdestensky in the pit conducting, I mean, you could not mess it up.
Do you feel like it was when people from other countries for whom English is not their first language, I mean, it's my impression that they just don't worry about it as much as we do about their language. When I've been in shows here with people that were from other countries and they were singing in English, they just sort of got close and it was fine. And when I'm over in Germany singing in German, or I get every day I just hives because I just feel like such a phony. I'm just like help me.
Somebody's going to find me. Somebody's going to find out. They're going to find me out. But I think also now much more, certainly since I started performing in recent years, there are now English language coaches in rehearsals, in the same way as there's always a French language coach or a Russian language coach or a German language coach. And I think that the penny has dropped that just because you can understand Friends or, a TV show, it doesn't mean you can actually express the language. And I think so for so many years, English was treated as like, yeah, everybody can speak English. Everybody watches television. Everybody watches films. But it has to be learned in the same way as you learn any other language. And I think it's really good now that we have language coaches in.
Well, like dialects and stuff. Like when I do stuff in the States, a lot of times, like this opera I just finished is called "Taking Up Serpents," and it's about a snake handling Pentecostal preacher's family, and I'm the bad guy, of course.
Of course.
And I get to use this Southern accent, and for me, like what I loved about like doing Dead Man Walking and stuff is that I got to use my own accent or an accent that's adjacent. And I think one of the funniest things that ever happened to me about accents was when we were in Norway doing Sweeney Todd, and I was trying to do some kind of British, and I think he said, you're just kind of all over England, like you just have every accent in every sentence.
Yeah, you were marvelous because
just do an American, you're fine.
Because you were funny because I remember you texting me beforehand and saying, you're going to have to help me with the English. You're going to have to help me with the English. I was going, look, you'll be fine. Relax. And then you came in and we did a sort of read through, I remember, or sing through, whatever. And you started off and I thought, well, that's very good. That's sort of Southern English. And then suddenly you sounded like you came from Glasgow, which is not even England. And then, then we had a bit of Northern England. And I have to say, it was definitely a guided tour of the accents, the regional accents of Great Britain.
Come on, we'll explore the accents that I learned from watching Doctor Who.
That's right. But in the end, it worked perfectly well with you having. I mean, you didn't sound super American, but you did have, but in a way, you'd been away for years as the character.
I like that.
I mean,
he got sent to prison in Australia, and they made him speak.
And he
like
came out
American.
as an American. That was part of the punishment.
Oh, no greater punishment could you imagine.
No. I know what we'll do. We'll make him sound like an American. No, you were fantastic in that. It was thrilling. Gosh, it was thrilling.
That was fun, man. It's silly.
It's mad, and the sad thing is for the young generation now of singers, that what we just talked about, however many minutes ago, about the phone going, "Can you get on the plane and come and jump in?" It's not going to happen.
And that's a lot of times that's how you get your for folks who don't really understand this part of the business. I mean, that is how I've gotten my foot in the door at a lot of companies, because I've come in and saved their bacon, and it's a company that never would have hired me before. I was kind of just he's one of those guys, one of those weird guys, and I came in and did it, and they were like, "Oh, it's amazing! Here's like 5 more jobs," and it's really a way for a young person to get a break, and it's gonna be. I mean, on one hand, when I talk to young people, I'm like, look, like you're 28, you're 25. This happened at the beginning of your career, so like everything you know from here on is gonna be better than it is today. So it's got it's got to
be worse. Yeah.
I said, but I mean, it stinks. Like, but I mean, this business is always hard on the best of days. And so you have, at least you can look forward to it getting better from now, but like people like my age, your age, like we're at the end, we're like sort of at the other side
You're
middle.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're in the middle.
I've been doing it for 20 years, 25 years, right? 45 years old now. So like it's in the middle, right? I'm sort of past the center point, and it's going to be, this hitting us at this point, it's pretty terrifying. Because you're just like, I've been counting on, for so many years, we sacrificed and worked for nothing so that we earn cachet and earn the kind of, it's not like I could save money when I was 20. So like my retirement depends on my 40s to my 70s, how much work I did.
Yeah. Well, I sort of feel, I mean, I'm 62. I don't care. Who knows, but it's fine. And I've been incredibly lucky and had an amazing career all over the world. But I'm kind of going into the third phase of that career now, which is to do the Kostelnichkas and the Kabanikas and the, the kind of the older roles, which are fabulous. But at the moment, all my generation suddenly think, are we going to wake up and find out that we're retired without realizing? But But
Oh, you're
hopefully,
retired.
I mean,
Am I? That no,
did I? When did that happen?
didn't.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But hopefully, it's not going to be that way. But certainly, now that we feel we've got a bit of a way through, as of sort of yesterday, when Boris Johnson announced the kind of breaking down of the lockdown,
yeah,
with a view to possibly things getting back to normal by June or July. That's a bit of hope,
yeah,
But certainly in the the beginning of all this, sort of last spring and into the summer, it just felt never ending. And gosh, is that it? Is it over?
yeah,
Without
yeah,
having had the luxury of deciding for yourself if it's over, because of course one has to decide eventually.
yeah.
That's it. I've done enough, and it's
Well, I
time
know
to
so
go.
many. I mean, and there's no safety net in America. So people who weren't earning income, they just had no way to eat.
No, no,
Because they're just
no.
we get like a $600 check at the beginning of the pandemic. Now they're talking we might get $2,000. That's it. Like $2,600 is all you can get, right? For a
Gosh,
year. And so I know so many people
insane.
who have just left. They're like, I can't,
Gone and done something else. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And maybe I'll
It's going to
come
be a
back,
big
maybe I
drain.
won't. I know one
Yeah.
thing that like just being home for a year. I mean, I'm super fortunate. Like I had Atlanta. I've had to work with Atlanta, some recordings and stuff, podcasts, but being at home and not having to be on the road all the time has been a
Yeah,
real
it's a
blessing.
shock.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, and I'll miss the stage too. But boy, like I know that after this is over, I'm gonna make a lot of different decisions. This whole thing where
Yes.
I just go on the road for 6, 8 months without
Like a
break.
machine just going round. Yeah, no, no.
No, can't do
This
that
is the
anymore.
longest. This is the longest time I've been in one place for 37 years.
Yeah,
And it's very strange, and having to kind of reprogram your brain to go. You don't have to get up and pack a suitcase and go to the airport. And you don't have to worry about how am I going to get all that done when I've got 2 days at home before I go somewhere else again. You've got all this time just stretching out in front of you.
hmm
It's a very strange concept.
One thing I don't miss is that feeling that there's an axe over your head all the time. Like I've got to get this. I mean, I remember the day I discovered, like it was in somewhere like the end of college, like my senior year in college or something, and I was like, wait a second, I've got to study for the rest of my life. I never get out of college ever.
Yeah.
No,
No.
you're in college forever. You're
Yeah.
going to be
I can
doing
remember
research for the rest of your life.
Yes. I remember working with a wonderful tenor who sadly died now, did a lot of sort of Puccini roles and stuff with him early on, called Arthur Davis. And he was fabulous, and he sang everywhere, all over the world. And he was singing in Cincinnati. I can't remember what. And when he came home from that job, he announced completely out of the blue that he was going to stop singing
Yeah.
opera for sure. He'd do concerts, and I remember meeting him somewhere, and I said, "Gosh, Arthur, what made you do that? What brought that on?" He said, "I woke up one morning in my apartment in Cincinnati. I was having a lovely time. The show was going well, etc., etc. But I thought, I've got a day off, and I've got to spend the entire day studying the next thing." And he said, "I just suddenly said to myself, you've had enough. Your brain's had enough. It was like having to do an exam every single day."
Every
And he said,
day.
I can't do
Every
it
day's
anymore.
finals week. It's always finals
Yeah,
week.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he said, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I just decided, yeah, if I sing the Verdi Requiem or whatever for the next 4 or 5 years and then retire, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And he said it was a huge pressure off his shoulders,
Yeah.
not to have to be thinking, well, yeah, I'm performing this or I'm rehearsing this, but when I come home, I've got to at least do 2 hours, otherwise I won't get this learned. And that sort of juggling all the time.
And I'm like
But
an ADD guy. Like I just have a hard time focusing all the time. And the only thing that really ever motivates me is pressure and like the time crunch. So
I
like
think everybody's like that, really.
I just well, like, but I've got friends who are like I'm studying for a role I'm doing in a year, and I'm like, what? like you're studying
Oh,
now
right, okay.
for something you're doing
Yeah.
in a year? Because for me, like I have to have that like it's next month, and I have to have it like
Right. And then
and
panic
it's
sets in.
really intense, and
Yeah.
but the idea, like these people that do like, I'm going to learn 10 pages today. And I'm like, that's fucking amazing. How do you do that? Like, how do you do that? I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah. I bet
I'm
I think
always like
because
ramming it.
I've had to sort of learn to do that because of learning things in these Wagnerian roles that you
Oh
know
my God.
you've got to map those out plenty of time in
I've got an
advance.
Albert coming
Absolutely,
up and I'm like, what? This is too many words.
it's a
It's
lot
a
of
lot of
words. I'd
text.
get that score out now. I'd say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
That's so
crazy.
cool.
Well, what's your number one party story you tell when you got your favorite colleagues sitting around, and what's the story that just slays the room every time, and the one that you can tell in public, because I know you got some that
Oh,
you
good
can't
Lord.
tell in public. We all do.
Yeah, there've been quite a few moments when you, as you said earlier, when you think, am I watching myself? Am I actually outside of my body watching this happen? Can this be true? You know, gosh, standing opposite a king marker in Tristan who didn't remember a single word and just stood staring at me, and the music was playing, and I was sort of going,
What do you do in that situation?
just
How
a
do you
blank.
how do you help them?
Well, I tried to sort of mouth the words or to, under my, but
Nothing.
poor guy just had a complete blank, just went
Yeah.
blank. And,
I find that
how do
there's
you pick it?
almost like a little demon in my head sometimes especially when it's something like even with stuff I've done a million times. I've done Dead Man. I could walk out this door onto a stage right now and sing Dead Man without thinking about it, right?
Yeah, without thinking, yeah.
But I don't know what it is, but it's like I'll be going through a score and there'll be something I'll think, well, that's going to be a problem. That remembering that
Mm.
rhythm or that word.
Yeah.
Usually it's a word thing. It's because I have all these points through a score, and I know if I get to that, it's all these guideposts.
Yeah, like a guide. Yeah, yeah.
And it's always one point where it's like, was it thee or thou or this or that? Like, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
And I know it. I know it as well as I know that this is my hand. I know what it actually is. But the closer I get to that moment,
The voice goes, it's not
like,
what you
wait,
think.
are you sure?
It's not what you
Did you?
think. No.
Is it that you thought? Is it that's what you thought it was, or did you trick yourself into thinking that so you can justify it? And this whole dialogue is coming, and I can hear the music getting closer and
Coming
closer
near
and closer.
and
Or you know that you got to come in at this recit or this entrance, and all of a sudden it's just gone. You just like It's like I feel like I'm reaching down inside of a suitcase and trying to find something or a box, and it's just empty. There's nothing down there. What the hell is that? What is what?
Do you get those dreams as well? Do you get those dreams when you arrive at the theatre and the music plays and you go, this isn't the opera I think I'm in?
I've never heard it.
Oh, yeah, what is that?
Yeah.
And then the costume, I get the costume dream, which is always you're standing and the dresser is trying to dress you, and for some reason they're calling your name to the stage. And I have an outfit that's got a million tiny little buttons that all need to be, and the dresser's going as fast as they can. But I mean, I do have a real story about that. We did Gloriana, Britain's Gloriana at Covent
There's a few
Garden
buttons on
years
that
ago.
costume, I bet.
Whoa, there was a few costumes, never mind the buttons. I mean, I had so many costume changes, and they were huge, great big Elizabethan, with these big underskirts that go out for, you can put your entire hands out and the skirt's still there, it's crazy. Beautiful, beautiful costumes, but a lot of them. And it came to the night when they were doing the live cinema relay around the world. And I had a fantastic dresser, and she was absolutely on it 100% the whole time. And there was never any, you can have that kind of hysteria when you've got quick changes and you think, I'm not going to get in, and then you start trying to help, and then it all goes horribly wrong.
Whatever you do, don't help.
No, just stand still and shut up. And there we were, and it was all going. It was the cinema broadcasts, and you have to kind of put that out of your head that
Right.
Your auntie in Montreal is actually sitting in the cinema watching you. It's bizarre, but anyway, Sarah was probably coming to the end of the second act, I think, and had one more change to come on before I send the Earl of Essex off to Ireland, and it was all a big moment, and I got wheeled on this thing as Queen Elizabeth, and Jerry, my dresser, just said, don't panic, Sue, but for some reason the hook and bar on the back of this dress has just come off, and we've got 19 seconds to get it back on. And had she not been the coolest person on the planet Earth and got that thing back on, I would have walked on half dressed for the cinema, because it was, what could we do? But she was amazing, and she quickly sewed it all up, and I don't know what happened, but
what those people are capable of is staggering to me. Because I've been in similar situations where you're like, oh God, and it's opera. It's not fucking life and death, and I have to always remind myself that this is just opera. No one's going to die here.
But at the moment when it happens, it's the worst thing on the planet.
It's like someone has a baby and a gun, and they're like, if you don't get this right, the baby dies. It's like,
I know. Terrifying. And those stupid things with costumes and things that can go wrong so easily.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I sang Madame Butterfly in the most wonderful production by Graham Vick, and I had a black, long black hair, and then another geisha wig on top of it. And I had to climb up these stairs, and it was with this lovely tenor, Arthur Davis, who I was just talking about, who then retired because he couldn't stand learning stuff anymore. He'd had enough. But I had to go up these steps, and it was my first night. Again, I jumped into it at the 11th hour, so it was all a bit, crazy. Yeah. And I had my geisha, and Suzuki was about to take that off and undo the outer garments and reveal me ready for the duet, for the love duet.
Yeah.
So I'm going up these steps, and Arthur's going like this. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? What is he doing? And I was tripping up these steps, and he's going like this. And this wretched geisha wig had slipped, and it was on an angle. I looked like a complete idiot, and it was like this, and I couldn't feel it because I had another wig on underneath, so I had no sensation at all. Yeah. And I got to the top of the steps, and this thing was literally hanging by a thread, and you could sort of feel the audience going, ah, ah. And then Suzuki grabbed me at the top, and she took it off completely out of the sequence as it should have been. Yeah. And there was this kind of collective,
oh God,
the audience, God for that. Yeah, oh dear.
I mean, I like to bring the audience with me, but not that way.
That's a bit crazy, yeah. But I think, there have been...
I love making them hold their breath, but that's a bit much.
Yes. But, having all the stuff we've talked about, it sounds like my entire life has been just a chapter of accidents. But, having said all that, there have been countless shows where I've walked on, I haven't fallen over, I haven't been stuck up a ladder, I haven't gone through the floor, I haven't lost my wig, and everything's gone great. So
yeah, I mean, I prefer it that way. But
yes, me too.
But a lot of people watch NASCAR just for the crashes.
Exactly.
And it's part of it. It's in this. Our art form is human based. I mean, it's based in humanity. We tell stories about humanity. It takes a lot of people to make it work. And anytime you got that many humans putting their hands on something, there's going to be a mistake or two.
And it's real. We are real. Nobody lives their normal life without incident or event. So why shouldn't operas be like that?
Yeah, and it's fun. Like, yeah, I love watching. I mean, for me, it really tests the mettle of a performer. If you can, in the midst of trying to tell a story of you, and you can do that split where it's you're over here, you've got an engineer over here trying to figure out how to make this stuff.
Yeah. That's right, and that's the whole point. Is that at the end of the day, we are telling stories. Yeah, and that's our job. And whatever else, if your wig's falling off, or your skirt's falling down, or your trousers are bust, or whatever, it doesn't. You've got to just ride that and just carry on telling the story. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, you can come off the stage when there's been one of those disasters, and you say to your friends in the audience, "Oh my God, I was dying. I thought it was terrible." And they go, "Oh no, I didn't notice. I was so involved with what the music was saying," or So what a world.
Well, see, it's so good to talk to you. Thanks for taking some time today.
Oh,
and I love telling walking down memory lane and telling these stories and stuff. I think people
thanks for having me. Yeah, it's lovely, and I just look forward to the day when we can be in the same room again and have some fun on stage, and then go out and have a nice dinner and a good giggle. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
and a few cocktails.
Definitely, definitely.